Welcome, everybody, to this fireside chat session. We're going to be talking today about scaling data enterprise or scaling data science in the enterprise. And my guest here today will be Ajinkya Kulkarni. He is the Senior Director for Data Science at Scale at RBC. And I'm Jed Dougherty, VP of Field Engineering at Dataiku. Today, we'll be talking about what it means to deploy data science at scale within a large enterprise, such as RBC. We'll be walking through real-life examples of this business, technology, and organizational lessons that we've learned, and looking at some of the best practices that can be implemented within your business based on what Ajinkya has learned from his experience in the field. We will have some Q&A at the end, so if you have questions as you're coming through, make sure to keep track of them, and we'll take the time to answer them afterwards. Ajinkya, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Jed, and thank you for the Big Data and AI conference and the attendees. I want to start by extending a warm welcome to everybody. This is such a pleasure to be here. Data science and AI have been hot topics for a number of years now. However, there is a strong trend that's happening, and that's around how do you scale it beyond just a few experiments on few single teams. And it is my absolute pleasure to be here with Jed and the Dataiku team today to share some of the lessons that I've learned, not just at RBC, but across other enterprises that I've worked with other folks that I've spoken to in my network. And the lessons we want to extend beyond just a pure technology. The technology is a key part of it, but how do you weave the right processes around it? How do you get the right people? How do you get and retain them so that you're really looking at this effort that scales and delivers the ROI that your organization is looking for?
Great. Let's dive right in. So what is it that makes data science so challenging to scale across a large enterprise? You know, maybe even more challenging than regular software development or regular analysis research, that sort of stuff.
That's a great question, Jed. I think the thing that makes data science really interesting, as I've learned up close and personal, I think data science is still, you're still writing some type of software. So in some ways it is related. But it's almost as if, traditional enterprises were catching up on how to write good software, how to, execute technology better compared to some of the more native tech players. And then on top of this, we've thrown in data science, which has its own key nuances. Things like, for example, you're not just depending on the code you write, but the code's output, the models, they might change depending on the data. As your data shift, your models start shifting. Your downstream results that you use from models, they also can start becoming different. This is just part of how data science behaves. In addition to that, you also have a very diverse variety of what people call data scientists. In a software development lifecycle, you would typically have an engineer with classically trained computer science or computer engineering background. In data science, you're looking at people from all areas. And that fantastic variety is what's really made data science an appealing field. So everybody from a STEM background, we have somebody on our team that came from a biology background. We have had people that came from non-technical backgrounds at all. And everybody's trying to come in and write what looks like software with very time-evolving characteristics. And this is why data science makes it extremely challenging, and hence our topic of the day, makes it extremely challenging to scale across an enterprise.
Makes perfect sense. So let's take a quick step over to your background here and kind of what RBC is doing in this space. How's your team structured? What does the world look like from your eyes?
Sure, and RBC from that angle is a fantastic place to work. Our CEO, Dave Mackay, is on record. We have 200 plus data scientists and counting. And I cannot think of a single business unit or area of the bank where there isn't an embedded data science team. We started out with a classic hub and spoke structure where my team, sort of acted as the enterprise data science team. And then beyond that, there were always sister teams embedded within different business units. And this really makes it interesting because not only do you have a central team, which is supposed to do kind of the scaling big exercises, you also have the embedded, business unit teams that are sitting close to the problems, close to the data, and they're solving their own problems that are pertinent into that business unit. So this makes it a really interesting blend of work. Where do you find kind of that, horizontal scale where you find reusable assets across the organization, but at the same time, where do you make it vertical and integrated enough such that it becomes an end-to-end solution for that particular business problem to leverage?
Yeah, I've seen that model really succeed a lot with the center of excellence holding on to maybe a central data science platform and helping folks learn how to use that, whereas then the individual business units have that experience directly within their field. And then who else within the organization do the data scientists across these different verticals end up working with the most? Data engineers, analysts, where else are they touching?
It's anyone and everyone. I mean, like we talked about earlier, Jed, this field attracts people from a very diverse variety of backgrounds, and because the field itself is constantly evolving, there's a large diversity of skill sets that are involved. So everybody from data engineers that sort of do the work before a data scientist is going to develop their models. There's data analysts who have been at the bank for a number of years, who understand the data as well as the business domain quite well. There's machine learning engineers who are looking at how do you productionize the model at scale. So these data scientists, within themselves, there's a lot of diversity, and they are also working with a wide variety of skills. So I think we're starting to kind of establish a key team here where you have diverse backgrounds, you have diverse variety of skill sets that people are working with, and you have wide variety of work because, bank deals with everything from retail banking all the way to capital markets to, wide variety of kind of that business unit requirement.
Wow. And what about the end results? You've mentioned models a few times. Is that the primary kind of product that a data science team at RBC delivers, or is it also analytics, visualizations, that kind of stuff?
I think you need a good variety there, Jed. I think we have seen that yes, a data science team might consider that a model is their key unit of delivery. But at the same time, we look at things from a pipeline or a life cycle view where somebody might, for example, like a data analyst might start with a data set, might develop an understanding, might suggest what are the right data sets to kind of merge together across organization. Then a data engineer might come in and be able to do things like join things at scale, make sure that stuff doesn't break down when you kind of perform the right type of data munging and data analysis. Then you have the data scientists who come in. So if you can see, this becomes like almost like a baton pass where every stage is passing something to the stage downstream. After the data scientists are done, it is still important to package the results in a usable format for downstream end users. If you're talking about a downstream end user who might be a machine, you're looking at something like a REST API or a programmable interface that the machine can tap into. If you're thinking about a human, we all tend to deal better with visuals and easy to kind of digest bytes of information. So then the model results need to be packaged in that manner. And then all of this needs to be done over and over again in a consistent manner. You're not just done when you develop a model, you come up with a good accuracy and a really cool visual. You're not done. You got to keep repeating that, and you got to make sure that the people downstream, particularly people like our sales teams, our operations team, the downstream business end users can rely on that and actually make a difference using data science.
Great. I love that idea of understanding who is going to be consuming it or what is going to be consuming it and tailoring it the right way there.
The what are going to become, Jed, if I may interject, the what is becoming more of the population that's going to consume it. Humans, I think, are getting outnumbered by machines by a large factor. So I think that what is going to become the key driver in future.
Right, and that's you derive much faster value at the end when it's a direct API consumption rather than someone having to interpret your results at the end.
Yes.
So before we dive in, I want to ask in a minute about the recent successes or use cases that are leveraging all this tech. But I had one more question about that definitely is important in the enterprise AI space right now, which is this division of should we be doing everything on-prem versus cloud? Obviously, for banks, there's extra security considerations that many other organizations don't have. Where are you and RBC falling on that line right now? And what is your transition looking like?
Yeah, and we, I believe, much like everybody else, we are looking at all of our options. I mean, I think you raise a very interesting point there. Cloud has definitely its own advantages. Things like, for example, you can scale without having to commit to a upfront infrastructure cost, while on-prem is going to give you that security and safety that some data, as a bank, as you said, we're subject to some regulations where some data just cannot leave our premises, where the regulators have access to full end-to-end kind of auditing capacity. So this makes it, this creates a situation where we want to use both cloud and on-premise infrastructure, but at the same time, our end users, the data scientists, the data engineers, all of these, skill sets that we just talked about, we don't want to make them learn a new software or a new tool every time they want to work. We want to make sure that they're exposed to a unified, consistent, viewpoint, whereas behind the scenes, if they need to, they can spin up like a few GPUs if they want to. If they want to work within their local environment, that's, or rather on-premise environment, so be it. But at the same time, keep that tool set consistent. So as they're learning the tool, they're getting the most use out of it without having to kind of spend learning new tools every other day.
Got it. So a tool that could be hybrid across on-prem and cloud ends up being very important.
Absolutely. And it needs to do, if I may add to that, Jed, the tool needs to do it in a manner that's seamless to end users. If you change the way things work, usually data scientists, a typical data scientist and engineer, I'm sure you have met, with your line of work, you've met few other folks from other organizations. But in our organization, similarly, we have masters and PhDs that we have specifically gone out and recruited to solve key problems for the enterprise. Last thing we want is to make them learn how to deploy, a Kubernetes, pod, because that's what's required to get the job done.
Right, of course. Having them pick up the AWS console is not the optimal use of their time.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into some of these recent successes. What are some specific use cases you've been working on at RBC that have successfully deployed?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm actually going to pick an example where at first glance, it might not sound cool or sexy. It's not the typical, Netflix-like recommender engine that you hear. Of course, those are cool. I don't want to, dismiss them by any shot. But I think a lot of the promise for data science and AI that we've seen come to fruition on RBC is helping with kind of the operational processes. Traditionally, enterprises have not been great at, hey, I do something in the front end. I want to get talking about a bank. I want to get a credit card. I want to open an account, or some of these, front end kind of activities that customers do. How do you make sure that in the back end, you're able to fulfill it just as quickly as showing it on a website? So the example I want to pick is an internal audit controls exercise that has to happen for the bank to do its job securely. And to our attendees at the Big Data and AI conference, I want to remind you that this is why banks do their business very securely. This is why when you come to the bank, you can put the trust in a bank that they're going to treat your data securely. It's processes like this that have to do with it. Key problem with the process, though, is that traditionally the process gets done manually. Banks would hire armies of people. So the exercise that they have to do is we have to audit our systems and our processes internally, and that produce large documents, that produce large, spreadsheets. If I talk about a bank, we live in PDFs and Excel spreadsheets. That's been the mantra for a number of years. All of this data has to be analyzed by a human to say, where am I doing well in my audit report? Where am I not doing well in my audit report? And the part that you're not doing well, what do I do to fix it? So if you can imagine, if you're spending too much time in the kind of the analysis of that, audits and controls, you're not able to kind of derive any downstream value quickly. And again, for the benefit of our audience, I'll share that some of the data types are very diverse. As I said, some of them are structured data types where you have tables and spreadsheets, that list the findings. Some of them might be PDF. Some of them might be more unstructured formats. So it was really important for us to be able to get at them in a more consistent manner. Adding to that, we were working with a partner team in the enterprise that was newly forming in the analytics and data science space. So they were still building up their skill set. They were still building, their people. So our team had to act as almost a catalyst to get things going for this team. So what we did is we actually, and I want to kind of mention that, Dataiku was the chosen platform for this exercise because, we some of the challenges we mentioned earlier in our chat today, everything from diversity of skill sets, diversity of kind of the work that has to be done, and the backgrounds. We chose this as a single platform so that we said, okay, you know what? It doesn't matter if you drive, a Corolla or a Honda, you're going to be able to drive on the same kind of highway and road system, so they're consistent. So in this analogy, the platform became that consistent network or consistent ecosystem within which we could develop. So we started with the two teams. The audit team also had their own data scientists. We had our own data scientists. And then we started kind of developing the models. We developed, you were asking earlier what type of output, some of these models consume. So once the models were built, and, it allowed our team to play around with a lot of the built-in models very quickly. So we, for example, played with things like supervised learning, unsupervised learning very quickly, produced the results. But I remember a lot of time our team was able to spend was on how to package the insights so that they make sense to the end users, the auditors. Alongside, we also had the audit data science team kind of going along and kind of doing knowledge transfer. And at the time, we decided that, the audit data science team felt comfortable to take over and run with it. It was a very seamless transfer because they were both operating on the same kind of ecosystem. And this is a huge benefit that I want to talk about in the theme of our talk today, which is scaling. All the knowledge, all the process, all the modeling, all the code, all the time that went into building that initial piece of kind of the data science model and the visuals didn't go to waste. It was able to just hand it off to a new team that could take and run with it to add their own innovation and they become kind of the owners going forward. And I'm proud to say that some of this work is already in production, is being used, and is making a difference. Again, as I said at the beginning of this example, this is not one of your typical, oh, this is a recommender engine that's gonna read your mind. I think that's as great as that would be. This is one of those exercises which is very real. We have felt it and we have seen it making a difference in terms of our ROI, and we have been repeating similar exercises elsewhere. So once we learned this as a potential working pattern that works for both teams, we also repeated something very similar with our risk team, and we're in the process of doing the same thing with our other business line teams. So there's a number of examples where this pattern was materialized and has delivered great benefits for us.
Great. And to reiterate what that pattern is, you have the verticalized team, in this case your audit team, working alongside your centralized team who's building out this core model. And then you're able to take the work the core team has done and seamlessly transfer it over to that kind of the spoke team there, due to, at least in part, the shared platform that both teams are using.
Absolutely, and I would even suggest that it allows, like, I mean, we live in a taking kind of quote from Henry Ford, we live in a hyper specialized kind of skill set world, right, where everybody has their kind of strong niche of skills. This allows a centralized team like ours to focus more on horizontal, reusable kind of capabilities. Not to say that vertical teams don't do that, but more of the focus of our work is on that. So we can have a really sweet spot where we can build it once, develop it once, and use it kind of multiple times. And then the vertical team, as you suggested, is able to take it and then integrate it downstream within their business processes, integrate upstream into their data sources that we may not have as much familiarity. So they get to develop a specialized expertise. And I can even tell you, Jed, this is something in the works, but this whole work pattern spawned what effectively became a data and AI product that we weren't even aware that could do it. Initially, we thought of this as just a single one-time exercise, but more we did it and more we started sharing with other teams in the bank how the work was done, there was repeated interest to say, oh, you know what, I would like to start leveraging this as well. So other teams were interested in building that. And I'm quite proud to say that this spawned a data and AI product opportunity that we had no idea was possible from the beginning.
That's terrific. So this last year has obviously been one of immense disruption to all business and life, and no less has it been a disruption to the way that we're working with data science and AI and big data. What are some of these new trends or lessons that we've learned from this post-COVID, mid-COVID future? Have you seen the way that this has changed that your business works, and do you think it's gonna? What parts of it do you think will continue into the future?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm gonna before I answer the question, Jed, I'm gonna throw in I don't know, an anecdote. I don't know how true it is, but my understanding of how data scientists as a skill set came around was after the last major disruption to the business world, which was the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, which spawned a need for a multi-skill set person, aka the data scientist, which could cut across skill sets like, business analysts, some software development, some presentation, and kind of present these end-to-end solutions. So I want to fundamentally say that I think we're in the midst of seeing another skill set like that come up. And there were two trends that, to answer your question directly, there were two trends that I think are going to accelerate this. One, even before kind of this, large disruption, came into our life, I think there was a large arbitrage opportunity that companies, and I would say Dataiku included, were seeing, where there was very highly paid data scientists, that were kind of on the scene, and they were being offered, kind of large sums of money to produce, in some cases, not effectively new knowledge. So there was an opportunity to kind of build those as a reusable skill set, so not just particularly offset the data scientists, but also make it available to a wider array of people. People who may not have the traditional, the technical background to do. So that one change and what I call it, if you're going to use that classic Porter's 5 forces, framework, this is that, idea of a substitution for that, skill set. What COVID has done, and this is quite unfortunate because of the layoffs that it has created, there's a lot of supply that's kind of coming through. There's a lot of data scientists, a lot of data engineers that are kind of looking, for roles. And I think this is also going to allow, to shift the focus a little bit away from, it used to be the candidates market. It's going to shift away a little bit to, the hiring manager, the recruiters market. So in that case, the people who are going to make it through, and my view is there's going to be two types of people that are going to come around. One, who are going to be able to use reusable pre-built assets, but focus more on the analysis, focus more on the insights, and make a difference in the enterprise. So that's going to be one bucket. And I call them, the people who are able to use pre-built solutions. And I think there's going to be hyper specialized people. So you're still going to have people like NLP and recommender systems and these different subdomains of kind of data science and AI that are going to be able to build some of these solutions that the group one would use. So I think that change is kind of already afoot. And this is where ecosystems like Dataiku make a huge difference, not just for the executives, but also for the professionals that are looking to invest in, this career. It used to be that if you wanted to start, training as a data scientist, you would start with a classic way of, okay, I'm going to install Conda, I'm going to, get pip going, I'm going to put notebook together. Problem is that approach doesn't scale. What works on your computer may not work somewhere else. Worse yet, you and another person sitting down the hall might have two different favored libraries. Now, suddenly you can't exchange knowledge. So this really allowing the idea of having common rails where you can create standardized assets, that really makes it easy for the professionals. On the enterprise side, the executives are going to get better ROI from an ecosystem like that because they can build it once, use it multiple times. From an audit and security perspective, especially for regulated industries, they're going to be able to show that everything that is being done, it's trackable. We know what's going on, so the regulators feel comfortable. And then for the general public as well, I mean, you and me, besides working for Dataiku and RBC, we're also general consumers. So for us, it's a benefit as well because we know that we're getting those delightful experiences powered by AI without sacrificing, some of the, giving away to ambiguity and chaos that comes along with it.
Wow. Yeah. It really is I don't want to refer to it as a commodification of these skills, but there really is that shift here of the transition to I guess buyer's market is interesting.
Absolutely, and I think, and if I may, Jed, since we have our big data and AI attendees here, I would strongly encourage that commoditization is nothing to fear because as over my career, I've seen commoditization happen to mobile development skill set. People wouldn't believe it, but at one point you used to have to develop bespoke code for every different major operating system. Today you use kits to do that. Same thing's going to happen to data science, and that's okay. Where you can make a difference is today, nobody worries so much about how am I going to tap into a device's processor or be able to adapt to the resolution. The kit takes care of that for you. What you focus instead on is what is the key problem that I'm trying to solve for the end user, and that has led to such a huge proliferation of apps on for everybody's phones. So commoditization actually led for more job opportunities, better skill set, and of course better pay for people who were involved in the process. So similar message I think applies applies to our attendees as well, especially if you're somebody looking for a role or looking to make a transition. Take the commoditization, understand which part of your work would it apply to, and create a new part of your work that isn't going to be consumed by commoditization, so you can continue to retain, your salary premiums, your career growth, and everything else that comes along.
Right. And to me, the big gap there that I see is, a lot of the tooling is going to become commodified. Whereas a lot of the thinking and a lot of understanding your business world and your use cases is not.
Mm-hmm.
That is still going to be something you're going to have to be the expert in when you're inside a room. Great. So I think we need to wrap up here pretty quick here and lead into the QA. But I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you to the Big Data AI community for having us here. And just a great convo.
Thank you, Jen. And again, I want to also extend my thank you to yourself for Dataiku for hosting me, as well as the Big Data and AI conference and the attendees. Hope everyone has a great day.
Okay. Can the conference attendees hear me there? So I'm just going to look for confirmation of that from the organizer. So we already have one question, which I'm going to take up here. There's a user that has asked, how did RBC get buy-in at the executive level to kick off this type of data science project and continue to scale? So I think it's a very interesting question. And I think there's a little bit of give and take that I'll kind of quickly share. There was curiosity and interest from RBC executives who had a lot of support and basically said, hey, go ahead and try it out. We are looking to see how the insights would make a difference. But then I think as practitioners, it also behooves us best to demonstrate that we can take this in stride, provide regular updates as we're building it, and build confidence. Essentially, we're building something that they had never seen before. So this is very, very important to show that proof point and bring them along. And especially more you can show that insights can be used downstream quickly and efficiently. I think that executive support stays and continues. So I hope that's a brief answer that answers a question that was asked there.
Thanks so much. Glad we're getting to have some audience interaction here. I had one question. Let's see. Oh, here we go. What's next for RBC in their AI journey? What are you targeting next here?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. This is the exciting stuff that keeps us here. I think we've gone through kind of Gen 1 of AI in the sense that we have done individual models, individual kind of things across the bank, and this is what I like to call why I have a job at the bank, is being able to do those things at scale. So now what we want to see is how can we start really driving that reuse at every stage of the AI lifecycle. So really shorten that time from we have an idea all the way to answer. So start being able to reuse data sets, being able to merge data sets across different repositories, adding different models that are developed by different practitioners with their own business kind of domain expertise. So being able to combine a lot of these things and really focus on two things: productivity for the professionals that are doing this, less frustration, and two, time to insights for them to go into market and make the difference. So unfortunately, I don't want to answer this in terms of here's a next greatest technical innovation. Those are, of course, there, but we really want to shorten the time to value.
Great. I had a follow-up on that around time to value. I often, when I talk to data scientists, their concept of value of a problem is very tightly associated with maybe the quality of the model they build. How do you extend that to more of a business perspective of value? For example, ROI, things like that. Do you have any insights there?
Yeah, and I think one way to address that is to me is all about communications. If you have an excellent model, but the business partners don't see it, they're just seeing it as a very technical mathematical exercise. It's really not going to play well. So it's at the beginning of any of these type of engagements, we have had a practice, whatever you call it, statement of work, some type of one-pager documents that list what type of outcomes that we're looking for, both from a technology perspective as well as kind of the business perspective. So it's not just sufficient to say the model achieved 80% accuracy, but that 80% accuracy needs to translate itself in terms of, okay, if we're trying to predict fraud, if we're trying to predict, I mentioned the audit problem, if we're able to glean that insight and actually use it downstream, full virtuous circle to see what happened to that insight. I think this is where you kind of make sure that data scientists, really get to hit their sweet spot in terms of improving the model accuracy, but you also make sure that your business partners are seeing value because you have metrics already incorporated that matter to them. So everything from, are my analysts downstream are working faster? Are we catching more, kind of issues or potential predictions? Are we doing things better than we did before?
Right. So you really need to be thinking about this ROI question and the business side metrics from the beginning of the problem.
Absolutely.
Great. We have one last question here. The question was, do you have any specific results you can share in terms of creating the reusable hub and spoke model?
I'm not sure if I understand the question exactly, but if I may put an interpretation, I think it seems to be more around how do you kind of set up and kind of scale up this. I think first thing you have to recognize is hub and spoke is not consistent. Someday you are the hub, someday you are one of the spokes, because the whole point of this is create a network that grows over time, so different nodes kind of share that. What we've seen is starting with a strong centralized team to create large scale assets that other teams don't have the capacity to build is always a great idea. So that's one thing I would say. Same thing with people training and kind of people process management. So how do they work? Where do they spend a lot of their time? Those two things I think you would start with at a hub and spoke model. But as you kind of get more down underway, you start producing some results. I mentioned that we're already done Gen 1 of the results. Then you start kind of shifting your role to teaching other groups to become hub and spoke. More often than not, the teams that we started out working with, spoke teams, they become within their own, being able to coach them and transfer those processes. So you're always trying to create your own success, in future, and really trying to create more people like you. I hope, again, that's a very generic answer, but given the question, I hope that answers, what you were looking for.
I think it was great. Well, I wanted to say thank you again, Ajinkya, for joining me here today and being so welcoming with your insights and your time. I had a great time talking to you, and I hope you had a good time as well.
Jed, I want to thank you and the Big Data and AI conference organizers. It was wonderful to share.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.